Comic Hour with your host, Andrew Glonner.
And Chris Ramos.
All right. We are going to review tonight the Incal by Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mœbius. This is published by Humanoids. They are infamously known as a European publisher of all sorts of titles. And this is a very big European comic in the industry. And this also came around the 80s. And the more we dive into this comic, we're like, wow, we can see the influence that it came out on this film and that film.
Yeah, very early 80s feel to it,
where it kind of went out to. And this was something that was sitting on my shelf that I picked up because everybody in our comic book circle was like, hey, the Incal, really incredible comic. Such a great world, really interesting characters, sci-fi epic adventure. Sign me up. Okay, we're all in for it. But then like diving into it, at first I was a little bit intimidated by it because it just looked weird. And I got bogged down by some of the technical words they use in there, the words they came up with on his own.
Yeah, like I kind of echo that a little bit. They tried to make a whole world from page one.
Yes.
And there was no real like grounding point for people to jump into. You were just in their world.
Right. So that was a little intimidating first, but then after coming back to it, when we decided, hey, we are going to cover this on the podcast, let's make a genuine effort, like we did with Fables, to read this story.
Let's hunker down.
Yes. And so kind of to put this in perspective, this team of Jodorowsky and Mœbius initially pitched a Dune movie, that just came out recently. The latest iteration of Dune came out, but this was in the 1970s when they pitched a Dune movie together.
And they got pretty far with that.
They got like some storyboarding and scripts and things like that.
Yeah, there's like a documentary on that.
Yeah,
like
there's a whole documentary on YouTube you can go check out. And even though they didn't actually make it to the screen or start filming, they had all this concept art and all the story fleshed out. And they realized they were a great working team together. And so comes along in the 1980s and they said, hey, let's do our own story. So this was published between 1981 and in 1988. So it's kind of interesting when we look at the era, because the more we read in comics, the more I realize I love 80s comics. I'm like, oh, of course this is from the 80s. This is why I love it so much and how it was so groundbreaking.
And it was originally French, printed French and heavy metal. And heavy metal, like I always think of it as like their version of Mad Magazine,
right?
Sort of,
Yeah,
like,
and a lot of like pre-Vertigo stuff. And when you think of those really edgy, somewhat political, but also like high fantasy, sci-fi, those were the cutting edge stories. I think Miracle Man started out in some of those, like, heavy metal or like Warrior Magazine or stuff like that.
It let the creative community just try things out.
Yeah.
And it was, to me, those kinds of magazines, especially heavy metal, they were marketed specifically for lovers of comics, lovers of, sci-fi, lovers of different kind of other worlds. And so it had the exact
and it was also a mature
market. Yeah.
They were mature.
Yeah,
it was a mature
Good point.
comic. So they knew they could tailor audience for that as well.
Yeah. And it was exactly for the audience they needed at the time. And so
then, trying to put creative teams, like when people come along and pitch their idea, they could like it kind of like, hey, this is what our magazine is built on. This is why we're doing it. And kind of start publishing that material, because like Marvel or DC, maybe at that time that'd have been like a risk that they would have, or maybe they wouldn't make that Vertigo jump, but maybe they could come over and do that. Is that
that's
more
good point.
Underground?
I mean, my take on it too is like, sometimes people tell stories that are mature just because they feel like that's the story they want to tell.
Yes.
So then they bring it to a publisher or something that says, no, we're not mature. So they have to like back off the story or change it to get it published.
Sure.
And so then you're like, all right, on one end, are you sort of stifling the artistic mind because they're trying to fit their vision into what your rules are?
Sure.
So
that'd be interesting. Yeah. To see what the publisher and the editor are like
what kind of medium do they come to? And then for things like this, I mean, imagine taking everything out of here that was considered an adult theme,
Everything.
it would really, 98% of it. Yeah. So, but it's exactly what it is. And then, you think back, okay, so was this an idea that they had that was adult themed? And so they just found a publisher that could run it, number one.
Sure.
But then number two, the European markets were really well into that mature land as far as comics go,
right?
More than we were,
right?
So while Americans sort of started what you would consider the modern superhero with Superman and all that,
yes,
we also, I think, put some handcuffs on, put some brakes on, and kind of stopped a lot of those other stories from coming out,
right?
Because we just didn't want that to be in the market,
right?
So that's why when European writers, comic book makers, British comic book writers, when they came over to the
British
US,
invasion,
everyone was like, this stuff is crazy awesome. It's good. It was true to them. It had a true voice. It wasn't like stifled or changed. It was like,
right. I think everyone was starting to find their voice, their unique talent. They were given a little bit more, not free reign, but a little more freedom to go that extra mile or tell that story. And not so much worry about they have to make it for their particular audience or will this sell?
Yeah.
It was a little more open for that time.
And, because
otherwise we wouldn't have got stuff like Watchmen.
Yeah, right.
Or Swamp Thing we talked about.
And Watchmen's a really good example.
Stories. Yeah.
Look at Watchmen and look how much it changed the entire landscape, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal for the type of medium you're in. If you're in like a comic book realm and you have a lot of people as part of it and you're trying to tell a story that's very specific to, your imagination, I don't know, it's hard to hold that back, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
No, I'm glad that we did get pieces like that came overseas, I guess, a good way to say it. Like Incal. So we don't know if this was this originally all French and then they translated it.
I believe so.
I guess so. Right?
Yes. Which is really cool. And another fun fact about Humanoids, the publisher, is that Mark Waid is now the current publisher for Humanoids. So it's really cool to see that full circle effect of like, hey, he worked in that industry tirelessly. Now he's part of that history. Well, so that's really cool.
So he recognized it.
And he knows the industry like inside and out.
Yeah.
And he has a very big voice for the industry and the creators and the talent and things like that at every level. So to see that come together. And
he's the perfect person to say, hey, if you have an idea, don't dumb it down. Just bring the whole thing and let's see what we got.
Yeah. Absolutely. It would be really cool to talk to him more about that. And so the Incal, as they say, is a very robust sci-fi epic adventure. Odyssey.
Yeah.
As some people call it.
Yes. It's like Homer's Odyssey.
Yes. So when we look back at stuff like Dune
or
something really huge, what are some other examples like huge sci-fi?
I mean, I kind of look at this as a combination of some of the bigger sci-fis that we're familiar with. Because, obviously there's sci-fis like, Planet of the Apes or whatever.
Oh, right.
A long span.
Yes.
Multiple.
Absolutely. I would say like this makes like Star Wars look small.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's all of those combined. And I could see where some of those, or this one, they're all kind of in that same universal thought process of, anything that you can think of. And that's kind of my little hot take on it was like, almost anything you can think of, if you can write it and illustrate it, it can happen.
Right.
So I kind of joked in the pre-show. I was like, it feels like Mœbius woke up every day and was like, let's try this. And that was his next.
Yeah. Him and Jodorowsky were probably just like talking about like what's our next thing, or how can where does the story go next?
What if we introduce this character? Okay, let's try it.
Right.
And then they just made it happen.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that's why a lot of people really do like it, because it's like endless imagination, just one wacky turn after another. It's like roll the dice and that's your wacky turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the main character, and we're not the experts on pronunciation, so you'll have to forgive us.
Oh, we're just gonna butcher all of it.
So it's Detective John Difool.
D-I
Fool. Yes.
So was like, Difool?
Difool. Yeah. And so he is a detective. He is, from what the language is explained, he is like a very low life detective where he starts
R
out.
class.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, is that A through Z? Or
yeah,
it's just kind of like arbitrary.
And that's the thing, they don't explain a lot of
that. Maybe there's more.
But to the way people like treat him,
yeah,
I think he's very lowly.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of the run of the mill detective. You know, he's a little bit respected, but he's still not like. He's not that. He doesn't stoop that low. He does his thing.
He kind of fumbles from
he
one
does.
thing to the
He
next.
is a very infallible character.
Yes.
He's a very human character.
Yes. So he's not like what you would consider these sort of tough guy cigarette smoking, like, you know,
knows everything.
Always has a plan.
No,
you know? No.
He is literally making up as he goes along.
He stumbles from one page to the next.
Right.
Literally falls into the next.
And
page.
I think we can talk about. I think the first couple of pages of you open the page, and he is literally getting tossed down
like
a endless corridor. And like, if you think of like the world of Blade Runner, which was influenced subtly by the Incal, is you picture like or Star Wars, where there's just space and somebody is falling. That's where we see our character.
Yeah.
He is literally getting tossed out into that infallible, like infinite space, and they think he is taking himself out, for better or worse. And they're all
super futuristic buildings. Yes. So it's like almost like they're, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories tall.
Right.
So it's like that idea, like, again, like Fifth Element.
Yeah. Fifth Element. Yeah. That's another influence.
Where it's the city's been built on top of a city on top of a city. On top of a city.
Yes.
So you could.
This is like a far future.
Yeah. So you could really fall almost forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not until like the police at the time see him falling, and then they go to save him and then question why he was falling. And some of the it's the police that save him, and they're like, why are you here? Why are you doing that? He's like, I don't know, I got tossed out. And he has kind of this amnesia effect. He's like, I don't exactly know why I got tossed, but I don't want to be there. And he's still trying to
someone
retrace
doesn't like me.
Right. Absolutely. And so we kind of get introduced. He still knows he's John Difool and things like that. And he's starting to put his life back together as we kind of introduce him. And then we meet some of the other side characters as well, that are a part of this crazy universe, that goes along with his kind of rival, Kill Wolfhead.
Yeah.
So he is literally a man, or
a wolf-headed man.
Right. And he is the exact opposite of John Difool, where he is very much pompous, very egotastic, when we kind of meet him at the time.
Alpha male.
Very alpha male. Absolutely.
I thought it was interesting, though, right at the beginning of the story, they set up sort of like the main character is being a goofball, and then another character is being like an alpha male, and
right?
Another character is being like the police, and so they really quickly built this world, but they built it off of things that we kind of know,
familiar concepts,
but then also like change them a tiny bit,
right? And so he's getting chased by these like a troll, kind of a red troll, a little harrier, and known as the Bergs, and so, or a Berg at the time.
So you get this idea that there's like
mutants. Yes,
deformed things.
There are people other than humans living on this world,
right?
And so he's being chased down by them because he wronged them for some reason, and so we kind of go back and forth. He evades getting killed, and he just wants to go to find either a bar or a place to west of where he had and just escape life. He wants to escape a life. First.
So you get the idea that he's not like
very
seeking adventure.
No,
he's not a hero really in any aspect.
No,
but he is.
But he's a detective, though.
Yeah.
So there's this underlying.
He's not a very good detective.
No, he's not.
So he's looking for
kind of a purpose
out of this. Yeah. To just like also do what he wants, but things just keep being like thrusted on him that he has to figure out. So he does a pretty good job of like, well, this is here now. I guess I'm doing this, and here's my next step.
Yeah.
But he eventually picks up like a token, like an artifact.
Yeah, he's in like an underground tunnel, and it's a sewage tunnel. You can tell if that is very green and gross. And all of a sudden, he like you said, he picks up this token, this rock, and he puts it on, and it calls out to him in his consciousness. And we find out this is the Incal.
Yeah. So when I first saw that too, I mean, the book, you know what the book's called, you know what the chapter's called, you know what so you're like, what is this, right? Like what can this possibly be? And here it's an actual object. So I thought that was kind of cool because usually for some of these kinds of things, it's a person or a thing or like
the tail,
a being or whatever. Yeah. So it's like for it just to be an object, I thought, well, okay, that's kind of cool. Like sort of not really a trope. A lot of stories
it's not
like
the
that.
Lord of the Rings, but it's
like
it's not far from off.
You found the thing. You're a goofball, and you found the thing.
Right. It's D&D, and you found the rare expensive.
Yeah. And the whole year that it fell onto you.
Yes. And he kind of just casually opens the box that contains the object, and just blue immense light like radiates from it, and so much that he has to close it. And you're like, whoa, okay, kind of melts a dude. Yeah. D kind of deforms, and he's like, what? Okay. Until eventually, he's kind of trying to hide it. And he runs to a shop and he meets his new friend. And says, I don't know, or maybe it was already somebody he knew, but it's a bird. It's a very white bird, almost a pelican. Its name is Deepu, Deepo, Deepu. Deepu. Yeah. Which is kind of funny when you say it out loud like that. But so this bird, it becomes like a companion or is familiar.
And it's not like a bird that you can identify either. It's almost like a white vulture.
That's probably a better description of a vulture, because it's not quite a pelican, but it's bigger.
Yeah, and it just sort of is like there with him. And, like you get the idea it's his pet, but at the same time, like that's the sidekick that they chose, right?
Right.
This weird talking.
Well, it doesn't talk. I don't think it kind of talks to him at first, but not like as sentences until
it just makes all the noises.
Yeah. And then eventually, yeah. So one of the ways the two characters come up with how do we hide this from the people who are running after us or coming after John Difool was to consume it. So the bird consumes it. And then all of a sudden, after the bird consumes it, he grows and becomes the ability to talk and takes on these extraordinary abilities.
And he's like glowing all the time kind of thing.
Right.
Sorta.
And then until John makes him like spit it out or like, punch the crap out of him or whatever. Like he had this power and John's like, whoa, okay. Meanwhile, the Bergs are still coming after him and chasing him down. And it's like, whoa, okay.
One thing that got me to, and I want to say like even more than halfway through this series, is that the pages sort of get busier and busier and busier because there's like there's so many things happening, and Mœbius, while he's drawing it, it's like he's trying to, I think, keep track of all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, because he keeps introducing different sectors, different characters.
How can I portray like this huge, like a scope the size of a planet or like the size of a city, and like you're running through, an ocean of people, and like some of these ideas too are like you're flying through a giant triangle the size of the sun. Like it's things like that you really need to have a good artist on your side.
Yeah, and that's what Mœbius really brought to it. And I guess this is a great segue to talk about Mœbius. How would you describe Mœbius?
I feel like his style is very much like a cartoon. Like I feel like when you're reading it, it's almost animated.
Yeah, he has I guess
it borders like cartoon and realism, like right, he's right on the edge.
Sure.
So like you can get away with a lot because it's almost cartoony.
Sure.
But then you also have this like super realistic background and starships and planets and things. Like he has moments of really tight, anatomically correct drawings.
Yes.
And then he has moments of just like wacky.
Sure. Yeah, because like when you go to like a spaceship or like the environment, like some artists we've talked about on the podcast, they hate doing backgrounds. Right. He excels at that.
Yeah.
He wants to immerse you into this world that him and Jodorowsky are building.
And I would say he excels in like, I'm just flipping through as we're talking too, like he excels in like giving you the idea of how small some of these characters are.
The scale. The scope and scale, correct.
And I don't know. I think the coloring is spot on. I think
his colors that were with the team. Oh my gosh, they did great. Yeah.
But like some of it also is just so chaotic. I feel like the story is very chaotic. I feel like the character. I mean, I don't know. That was like some moments just tore me right out of the comic. Okay. And I was just like, this is a lot of stuff that they're trying to do.
Absolutely.
And I felt like it was like, I don't know. I was torn out of it sometimes because it was just a lot.
I definitely had to read it. And I think there's like 4 or 5 major parts where once I got to that major part,
like the books where it breaks into
or the volume itself, I think I sat it down a little bit and came back to it later.
Yep.
Just took a little breaks in between because there's a lot going on, so you need to like sit with it a little bit. Although I will say the comic or the graphic novel, we'll say, is broken down into like 8 to 10 piece little like mini chapters.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the best way to describe it. They're like 10 pages or something.
Yeah, they have their own title and their
own title. Idea. So, but I kind of like that in this style because it kind of gives you a title. It gives you just enough where you can continue on versus some modern comics. They don't do that because I think that idea is kind of faded away, but you just keep reading and reading and without a place to like pause.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Or like, that idea ended and now we're going on to the next idea.
And you don't have to figure out like, is this the future? Is this the past? Is this some other group?
I think it gives you just enough pause, especially the way that the pacing of the story is. We talked about that in the pre-show. Mm-hmm. The way Jodorowsky writes this is very fast. The pacing, the dialogue compared to like Silver Age comics.
Yeah.
They're bogged down with like a lot of narration. This has few and far between narration. It's all told through dialogue. And I would say it does like a lot of like 6-panel and 9-panel grids. So you're literally hopping around the page and your eyes are continuing.
And it's mostly people talking.
Yeah.
So you're not really.
It's short phrases.
Yep.
It's very few parts of the story. It's a lot. Very few. Unless it's a big exposition jump or, hey, we got to build up to this. It's a lot of high intensity action. It's keeping you moving, which I kind of like that after I started to like move past the jargon.
Mm-hmm.
That was the part that I got stuck on at first. But once you I accept the jargon for what it is, and I'll kind of figure out by the context.
Yeah, it's like their techie language, and like that's what I was just the Necoroid.
The Necrodroid.
They keep coming up with all of that. It's like they just keep making these words that are just kind of weird mashups. So some sci-fi, it really expects you to like learn its lore and like fall into its history and why are these things like, and they have like a thesaurus or like an appendix in the back and stuff and a glossary and it's
that was some stories like that that almost that takes me out of it because if you put too much into that,
it's like you have to study before you can actually enjoy
and
it,
I kind of draw a line a little bit sometimes because I'm like I just want to read the story, man.
And your story should speak for itself.
Yes.
In a comic.
Yeah.
In a book, okay, you're doing a little bit of that research in your mind, but in a comic, you have to like immediately be able to jump into it because like we've said before, comics are on one hand an escape, but on the other, it's like you need to instantly understand what you're reading and looking at. You can't make it too wacky where people are like torn apart of like their own imagination can't even wrap around it.
Right. And that we always talk about the space between panels and stuff, and trying to pick up on the context and what's the story being said, whether the panel's saying versus what the words are saying, and trying to make that all mash together. And it takes a whole team to do that. To follow that script and realize the writer's vision and stuff. It takes a whole team. But yeah, so when we're talking about this like high, when you get into like high sci-fi stuff, like absolutely that could make or break you. So definitely, yeah. But still, yeah, I really enjoyed the pacing and keeping it going and keeping your eyes moving and stuff. So yeah, that was cool. So yeah, the Incal, and it falls in the hands of John Difool, and we kind of start learning that this is like a prophecy or a greater power that people have heard of in the universe, but they haven't seen it come into play until now.
Or they know they should be searching for it.
Or they're searching for it.
Like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, yeah, that's a perfect example.
You're going to find it someday, maybe,
Yeah,
like
right.
Know it's out
and now that they know it's real, it's an object, somebody has it, they're trying to go track that down.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the Incal is trying to tell John, hey, we got to build up this team to fulfill this greater prophecy and what's coming of it to battle a larger enemy, because there's always a larger fish out there.
Well, because it's the whole universe now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he slowly builds up this team, and we kind of figure out what the powers and capabilities are of the Incal. It can almost do anything you want it to do.
As long as you talk to it.
It's
like, well, now that
he's very calling out to it.
Yeah.
Well,
now that we're having a conversation, it's like, sorry, I can't do that, Dave. It's just
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for talking to me.
Right. You can't use it all the time, but you have to use it when it matters.
So it is somewhat sentient.
Somewhat. Yes. Yeah. A bit symbiotic as well.
Godly powers.
Godly power of epic proportions. So I was like, okay. So we're slowly building up this team. So we get then introduced to like the Meta Baron. The Meta Baron is really cool. He's praised as like the Boba Fett.
Yeah, like the universe's most accomplished
mercenary. Yeah. He's actually really cool. He's one of my favorite characters to follow.
And I thought that the wolf head was kind of funny because he's like, once the Meta Baron shows up, he's like, well, who's this guy? What do you need him for? The Meta Baron?
Why is he here? Because he's known for like hunting him down or hunting people down.
Yeah, he's the ultimate alpha.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're slowly building up. There is like twin sisters that are like on the opposite sides of each other that have to unite. One was chasing down the Grail, and then one wanted, or the Incal. I'll call it the Grail now. But one was chasing down the Incal, and one was waiting for the Seekers, the team, to find her because she knew about the greater prophecy, and she was like the ultimate guide. She was like, hey, I'm the voice for it. I know the path that we have to go on.
I am the voice.
Right. And we kind of think about those similarities. Think about the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, how do we get Frodo from the Shire to Mount Doom? We need a team of characters to take him there.
Or again, back to like Fifth Element.
Yeah.
Like she didn't know anything about her destiny or her path,
Yeah.
But she happened to stumble into the right people.
Right. And at first, you think like the Meta Baron. I thought he was going to just straight up kill John, the main character.
Yeah, I could tell, like, I don't know. I felt like, so the book was paced to the point where it's like, once you kind of got like, oh, I feel like this is what's happening. Yeah. They would introduce a different character that would kind of put a new path. Yes. I think this book is all about like anything could spring from any given path, right?
Right.
Like one new character, one new object, one starship could now change the entire direction. And you just sort of hope through this story, even though it's a little chaotic. I'm still standing by that.
Oh, it is very chaotic. I won't say it's not.
You sort of hope
it has
that
his methods to his madness.
Towards, you're like, all right, hope this leads to something.
Oh, right, absolutely. I don't think there was anything that
crazy
that didn't go anywhere. I think he paid off all of his. It had like a good flow of like the stuff we're doing at the beginning will pay off at the end. We're meeting characters.
He came full circle on quite a few things. Yeah.
I would say he had a really good flow. We kind of meet his villains along the way. And even though one villain may die, like the president, so the president is kind of on this, like, he's portrayed as a villain in this story. and he's kind of portrayed as this like very nothing is below him. He is ruler of this planet, and he's infallible. And he'll never be touched. He will never suffer any damage or hardship. He is locked away. Well, there's a rebellion building up and things like that. And the Incal
right?
and the Incal and stuff like that, they kind of put that path onto that rebellion theme and taking out this guy so we can liberate the people. That's, I think, another theme that Jodorowsky wants to build on, is like that rebellion, that freedom, that trying to let that loose a bit.
Yeah. Well, and like you get that idea too, that European sensibility, I think, is like, no matter how many mixed people you get in here, how many mixed religions, mixed backgrounds, mixed cultures, that there's always a chance of them banding together.
Yeah,
right?
There's that common purpose.
Yeah. So some of those storylines here are like, well, we're so far apart, how can we ever be similar?
Yeah.
But even the guy with the wolf head still just sort of gets along with
and
people.
He's kind of on the fence sometimes, like, I don't know, or hey, my queen.
Yeah. But he kind of,
the Holy Mother, like, why are we doing this? Yeah.
I always wondered on some of these, like,
the big
sci-fi stories, like, how long would it take for us to genuinely accept that there are wacky, crazy things out there in the universe? And like if this was real life and there were hundreds and hundreds of different types of humanoids, like, how many thousands of years would that take for us to just be like, yeah, okay, we're all the same deal, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard point to argue, I think.
That's kind of what he's hitting a little bit. It's like, in the end, it was just a goofy human that's still our main character.
Absolutely.
Of all these crazy characters, you still have this goofy human.
And ultimately, like, they call it the Great Darkness. That's their overarching foe that the Incal is trying to fight. That's their cause, their ultimate evil. That's who we're trying to defeat, is the ultimate darkness. It looks like a big giant egg, and that what's one of the things they called like the shadow egg, like trying to defeat the shadow egg,
black egg,
because it devours like suns. Okay,
by the way,
suns and planets and things like that. And when it dies, it replicates itself into smaller sun or black eggs, and you're like, whoa, okay. But yeah, along the way, John has to go through a lot of trials, a lot of barriers. He has to overcome things within himself.
He has to see himself as capable.
Absolutely. He has to grow as a character.
Yeah, he never gave himself credit.
Really, yeah. There's one point in the story where he has to become a better fighter. It's like, you have to be a level 8 fighter to go fight all these people. Oh, wait, you are we might start you out as like a level 2, level 3. And he can't even make it past level 6. And he has to face like a horde, like a 10,000 people horde. And he's going by himself. He's doing okay as a level 6. He can put up a little bit, but it's thanks to the Incal and the team around him that he can kind of get over that hurdle and become greater than he was.
And it's not like he wasn't scared. It's not like
he was scared every moment. He's like, I don't know, man.
Like, he's not totally bumbling on accident, because like some of these characters, like, I think we're like an Inspector Gadget or something, they just sort of, things just play out and they just fumble through. He actually is trying to either get away or actually win, and sometimes he does.
Yes, because as the story progresses, like, he says, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done. I don't want to go. I'm done with this. He went just through this extraordinary effort to beat the birds, I'm not gonna do it. To fight in the gladiator battle, to get over this hurdle, and he's like, I don't want to go any farther. And it takes like his love interest to like, please, or if you do this, then if you get over this challenge, then we can go back. We can go escape. It never doesn't.
Yeah, it's almost like one more day.
One more day, one more push, more push. Absolutely.
Tomorrow will be better. You get that idea.
You get that idea a lot. What was the other character that was kind of weird? This overarching character was the Empress.
I thought she was cool.
It was cool to see that. It's like this embryonic egg with two people in it, and that was really cool. And that it kind of tied like what we know from Star Wars as like the Senate, and then Palpatine. Sorry for all the Star Wars synonyms,
yeah,
but
no, exactly.
So it was kind of that feeling, but you never knew if like the Empress was in it for was evil or good. They were just kind of playing the political, like overruling like power until they get like corrupted at the end.
Yeah. Well, and
the uprisings kind of happen through like those scenes as well. So you kind of that starts kind of like the political intrigue of what he wants to say on the book.
Yeah, I mean that was the other thing too. I think he drew women really carefully.
Yeah,
like all of females.
You want to be purposeful.
Yeah, they had a really like fine line to them. They had, somewhat similar faces, right? But they were always sort of drawn in this idealistic character mode, I guess, or and body and things like that. So I think for him, while he showed John as just
goofy,
the fool,
the fool.
That's why I think it's
fool.
He's just the fool.
Yeah.
Then he showed women as sort of oddly calculating, like where they
absolutely. There wasn't anything less than calculated,
right.
they were very.
So he must have really seen her as a main character too.
Oh, absolutely,
someone to contend with,
right? And then there's also like family plot twists in that where there's a son he didn't know he had, and whose kid is it, or where did this power come from, or how did they have this kid? He didn't have that kid.
And you're not like spoon-fed answers. So
right.
No,
you have to earn it. You have to keep following the story and keep reading.
So I could see where this getting back to like how it was originally published, I could see where this was published as a monthly or weekly or whatever.
Yeah,
that people would want to come back to it because it's just enough of a train wreck to be like, I gotta see how this turns out.
Like,
and now he's caught in this other world, or now he's falling down this exploding passage, and
there's another overarching villain to take care of.
They introduced another character that's kind of intriguing. So I think they gave enough of those little breadcrumbs to keep people coming back.
Right.
And sometimes I do try to see, like, while I'm reading something, if I know it was a serial, if I know it was a weekly,
sure,
then it's like, is it written that way on purpose? Like, did they sort of give these extra stories? But I don't know. Sometimes you read comics in the newspaper and it's just like, nothing happened.
Right.
Like, this is just some weird
anthology.
Right?
I would say this story as a whole is divided into like almost 2 to 3 major parts. One part is just leaving the first planet he's on and forming his team. That's a whole effort. Understand the Incal, there's a black Incal, so there's like a female and a male, and
like a yin yang.
a yin and yang that they have to unite in order to overcome this power and escape. That's one part. Second part is, okay, let's go tackle the prophecy part and go liberate and start conquering our villains. Okay. The last part is like the last part is the great darkness that is ruling over all these planets. This is our last ride, and we'll take everything that we are part of to defeat him. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. And how many people does it need
take
to get
trials?
Involved? The other thing too, I paused at this one page where he's kind of tied up into almost like a downward crucifixion sort of.
Yeah.
But the characters as they're drawn and everyone else and the colors and the faces and stuff, it almost reminds me of like Where's Waldo a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the idea that
when you get like the scope. Yeah.
It's just these goofy, colorful characters. Every page has a million colors on it.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just like, that's the idea of the cartoon aspect to me.
Yes, because it's not.
And it gets pulled back into something real,
right. It's not looking. So. In a previous episode, we kind of talked about the immense detailed faces and close-ups of Jim Lee. Yep. Jim Lee would, really go in close for a close-up
on the whole page.
Or Neil Adams. Neil Adams would do those intense close-ups of a character's face and expression, and really focus on that panel. Mœbius, he's not going to do that. He is concerned. He wants a character design that you can identify, but also he wants to say, here's the larger picture. Here's the space that we're in. Here's the panel we're on. Like, how does it make sense with the page?
Like, this is how insignificant this person
especially
is.
When you're doing a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 9 panel grid.
Yeah.
You can't spend a whole lot of time. You can, but that's why you're paying it off through the beginning of the story. You're establishing who that character is, building up that identity. So when it kind of gets really fast and you start doing more action and more with the character, pays off.
Well, and it also, on one hand, pushes that it's not our world. And the other hand, it pushes that, I like if you walked into a space that was this huge and this many people and this many things going on, and you were spinning through like space on this triangle ship, it'd be like, it'd be like, what in the world can your mind handle?
Exactly. You have to have that real suspensing that belief. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, that's the whole idea of like, he's continually reminding us that this is not Earth in any way.
No. Although when he gets to some of those places that really smell bad, you're like, this world smells like garbage and there's a ton of rats around.
Yeah.
We know what that is. Okay. Yeah, we can identify with that.
We got you.
But then in the plus side, when these characters get summoned by this spectral lights up to this like ghostly council of just older generations of these these little like side characters that like, to fulfill the prophecy, you got to do this.
Yep.
Like that's like totally like kind of religious aspects, or calling up other like sci-fi and fantasy aspects, however you want to approach that. And so you kind of have that bit of both, that realism, the sense of fantasy. But that's what sci-fi is. That's why we love it.
That's why comics, they put together what we can. Anything you can imagine, you can get down on the page.
Yeah.
And that's the big part of this comic. And maybe why it's so popular, because people see it as like breaking almost every rule that a comic book has and totally just devouring that into its own rule book or a world or whatever.
Right.
And then people can figure out like, well, if he can do this, if this is the story he can tell, I think that opened the imagination for a lot of other readers too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we kind of said during like the podcast, you look at like Blade Runner or Fifth Element or any of these like big sci-fi, and these creators almost did Dune, but they were told, your idea is a little too far out for Dune. Sorry.
You need to tie it back.
You need to tie it back, or hey, do your own thing. So they did their own thing. But they do an extraordinary job of building up their own world that it's still easy. And I think I actually enjoyed it, coming back to it. I enjoyed it. And I would say, give it a chance, give it a shot to explore this world. You can read it digitally. I have the hardcover that came out. It's
yours isn't the deluxe one. It's
this is like a standard size hardcover almost, but it does have nice glossy paper to it. It was really built well. It's got a ribbon in it too. But they did come out with a like absolute DC edition, but their equivalent of it, where it's oversized.
But that's just the one story in that, and I don't think they've followed that up with any. So if you want to get the whole series, then you want to get the regular sized hardcover.
Yeah, it might collect the whole thing. We would have to check back into that, but but honestly, like for an entry reader, I would pick up this one.
Yeah.
That way, like the deluxe size
regular
is more
size.
like, is more like after you enjoy the story and you really love it, or hey, you've read it before, but you want to get that format for that oversized. Absolutely. Go for it.
Hardcover, has a ribbon. It's good. Well,
absolutely. Or if you just want to read it on Hoopla, see if it's for you, and then buy the physical. Absolutely. I think I would definitely recommend it to people. Like we said earlier, that jargon, those words that you don't know, that's don't let that stop you, because it really goes by fast, and you'll pick up the context clues. You'll get a sense of the characters, what makes them, what makes them tick a bit, what are the motivations, the rivalries, the evil powers that be, what's kind of like the political intrigue. Honestly, the politics of it, sometimes you can like kind of skip through it a little bit or kind of skim it, like, okay, I kind of see where this is going.
And just as big of an imagination you think it gets, it just keeps going.
Oh, it just gets bigger.
It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow. Now it's next step.
What are some of your overarching thoughts on this?
I mean, I think for an 80s comic, it does.
This was both of our first time reading this.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I've always heard of it, right? It's just one of those things that are out there that you're like, oh yeah, there's that one, you know? And I mean, for an 80s comic, it definitely has a lot of those bigger ideas where they tried to push the medium as far as they could, right? But I didn't think that the like art or colors took you out of the story. I just think my overarching feel of it was too much in every angle. So I just felt like I wanted it to be narrowed down in just not a lot, but just a tiny bit.
Right.
Like more of a, where is this going? Like, what's the goal? You know, like,
sure. Say that more up front, maybe.
Yeah. And like, it just felt like it was almost like every few pages, it just totally changed direction.
Yeah. It was definitely felt like a marathon.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you keep writing and then you keep writing. And then you keep going or keep exploring and venturing.
It felt like you took 5 or 6 sci-fi books and just sort of like shuffled them like a deck of playing cards together. And it's like, this is the story now.
Right.
And just every few pages, something changed.
Right.
So to me, it was a little too much like, wow, there's just a lot going on. I don't know what to focus on. And I don't know if I'm involved. Because for me, I didn't know if I was involved in the story or if I was involved in just sort of watching the train wreck happen. So it was like, I want to be involved in the story more than I do in the like, I'm this far invested, so I may as well keep going. Like that part of it was.
And I guess for me, like this was my first full story with Mœbius's art. I've always seen his art on Facebook forums, groups, and really liked his art, what it looked like, but I've never read it in a complete story. Because he is one of the great graphic novel artists that are out there.
It's admirable for what he drew.
Yeah,
that's that part of it.
And I think it kind of really defines a style and really kind of influenced a lot of other people. So people really look up to his style and kind of seeing it from just a different perspective of everything else that we've read. And I was like, wow, this is really different than anything we've read before. We can say that because we've read a lot. We've started to read a lot.
Really, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So we're starting to build that up. So just different way to think about, especially with the paneling stuff. Not a lot of people do 6 to 9 panels anymore, or like he doesn't get bogged down by narration, whereas his peers in the field really could spend a lot of time narrating the book.
Well,
and just make that.
Yeah, he doesn't overemphasize areas that don't need it. He doesn't overdraw, and he doesn't just like scribble and get weird.
No.
It's like almost every page really is thought out. I mean, for that moment, it is.
Absolutely.
You could tell his imagination is immense.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, Mœbius passed away in 2012. So we get to look back at his art and really, celebrate and appreciate for what it is and kind of look back and study that. I think a lot of people do. And so if you're interested, you read the Incal and you're like, hey, what else is there? Or
this universe, the Jodoverse.
The Jodoverse, as they call it. So Alejandro Jodorowsky, he said, well, I have this big imagination, as long as people are interested and along for a ride, absolutely. So he made a prequel called Before the Incal, kept the title real simple. And then he made the final Incal.
The afterward.
So the epilogue. There's deconstructing the Incal, which is as Eisner nominee, and kind of breaks down a little bit of those themes, maybe the art and things like that. And then other artists started. That was mostly Mœbius and some of his other like colleagues that were on it. Then he goes on to say, we're going to split off all the main characters. And because he does really build up some interesting characters in this. So there's like the Megalax, there's the Meta Barons, there's the Techno Priests, there's the Jodorowsky Presents, Weapons of the Meta Baron, Kill Wolfhead just came out. They just keep building on. And honestly, some of them, I think, and eventually Jodorowsky will get to the point, and maybe he's already there, where he kind of has this plans laid out for the characters, or kind of like probably a story Bible of some sort.
Yeah, right.
And they'll go, okay, universe, this is who I want you to take care of. This is how it's written. And if you can continue this world after he's gone or whatever, or continue on or pass it along to build that legacy up, why not?
I mean, it's like almost endless
Especially
stories.
with the
He's
art,
already doing that.
Especially like with the artists that he's working with and the immense talent and stuff like that. It's huge. So yeah, even like the forward in the story, that was Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah,
he's a super fan. He's like, you got to check this out. You got to read it.
Mark Wade's obviously a fan.
Marcus Wade, he's the publisher. Jason Aaron, who we reviewed his Thor run, who also did Star Wars and Scalped and Southern Bastards. He was like, this is the sci-fi story. Lose yourself in the George Odaverse. Huge, like, in America and across the seas, like, there is definitely something to this world that Jodorowsky and Mœbius established.
I would almost think like if you're a writer or a comic book writer or artist and you get stuck, you just feel like, oh, I'm just kind of like you could read this and it would just open you up a little bit. Like absolutely. That might be a good side effect, so to speak, that, it helps you see that there's of immense imagination. It's almost like an entire art museum in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if like you're a writer, you're a sci-fi writer, you want to go on that field, like don't be like, yes, there's enough that you got to pitch it to a publisher, but still keep those ideas of like the general world building you want to accomplish.
Yeah. And you just open any page and you'll see a whole world.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of wraps it up. We really appreciate this story and we hope you check it out in any format that you can.
A little bit of history.
A little bit of history there. All the way straight from our favorite 80s comics. And this has been another great episode of Bam Pow Comic Hour. This is Andrew Gallanter.
And Chris Ramos.
Signing off.